Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of The Outer Realm. We're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We're fully sponsored by the amazing folks over at Folgers Coffee, who have been on this journey with us for about 4 years now. So thank you very much, Folgers. We love you and we appreciate you so very much. We also would like to thank Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, for his contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro that you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite streaming platforms. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes in the horror genre and does incredible commission pieces of all types. So 400 episodes, Bubbles. 400 episodes.
Well,
tonight.
I haven't been here for all 400, but bravo to you. I'll let you know when I get there. But
no. 400.
Seriously, wow.
400. I know. Thank you.
Who'd have thunk it when we joined this network under the craziest time in all of our lifetimes?
Yes.
Internationally, without saying the C word.
I know.
Who'd have thunk we'd still be here?
Yep. True.
So thank you to all of you.
Yeah. It's amazing and still going strong, and we're grateful to everyone who listens and grateful to everyone who comes in and participates. And tonight is no exception. We welcome for the very first time Christopher Jordan, who's going to be discussing the benefits of using frequencies for meditation, brainwave entrainment, and consciousness expansion, and all kinds of like phenomenal stuff. So can't wait for that, because I'm always a bit of a harpy when it comes to frequencies and vibrations, and everything's made up of frequency and vibration. How many times are you going to say it?
But
I know.
Even scientifically,
I know.
Everything is energy.
I know. And people just sometimes will occasionally look at me like I have two heads. Yeah, for decades, years I've been working with people and really recommending this sort of stuff for self-healing. And it's a real good feel-good thing,
Doesn't ultrasound work on frequency?
I don't know. It's like, being at a concert, sticking your head in the speaker. I don't know. It comes in many different forms, but I can tell you I love binaural beats. I love listening to it. And I cannot wait to see what Christopher's going to have to say about all this. So without further ado,
he's here.
Bam.
Hello.
Guest of honor.
How you doing?
We're good.
How are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me on tonight, everybody.
Oh my God, pleasure.
It's always amazing having a podcast host on, because there are not going to be any tech issues.
No. Yeah. One would hope. I was actively going through and doing crazy updates on my studio computer until about 2 hours ago.
Oh, that's nice.
My buddy left. I was like, no, seriously, like this program needs to work. Whatever happens after that show tonight, I really don't care. I can stay up all night, do updates, whatever. It was hilarious because like you said,
maybe I should update mine.
We've normally got our game in check.
I know. Well, you got that nice, cool radio announcer voice too, which is really
That works. But things happen, and sometimes there's tech issues.
That's right.
But I'm just saying the chances are a lot
better than average.
But you're hanging out with us tonight on our 400th episode.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That is an
you.
incredible milestone for you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got great listenership and a lot of phenomenal guests, such as yourself, who come out and give of your time and share your research, your experience, your music in this case, which is really fantastic. So I always like to start off with humble beginnings in respects to what brought you to where you are today with all of this. I was just sort of touching a little bit on how I'm a bit of a harpy when it comes to this stuff, but I didn't just, fall into it. I found it along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I would kind of say I'm the same way. Even here recently at a conference that I was attending, there was somebody with RF blockers, things like that. And like I am a corporate AV technician by trade. I regularly do things like RF coordination, where I come into a hotel property and it's like, oh, what frequencies is house security using? I want to make sure my microphones aren't on the same frequency, that we aren't picking up radio transmissions from a local radio station, things like that. So, and it was one of those, it kind of hurt me inside that the person they're selling this $400 device literally could not tell me the range of specification that the device was using. Wow. It's like, well, if you can't tell me the range that it's using, like that means you actively can't tell me what you're showing me on screen. And that kind of disturbs me if you're trying to sell a product for $400 that,
it's like
that you can't actively explain the technology behind it. And just my world as a technician,
I think that
tends to bugger me sometimes.
That seems to be the even flow, even with sales reps in cars. Just saying.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean that's a sales rep. I worked conferences for years. I worked them in the medical industry, and it was one of those like, all you pretty ladies over here selling heart catheters, I don't see you in the heart catheter training session over in 22B. So I really wonder what your skills are with the heart catheter that you're selling.
Wow.
No, they were just salespeople.
Right. So did you say, get out of my way and let the professional explain to you?
Come here. I've been sitting in the back of that session. I can tell you what that heart catheter does. But quite
let
honestly,
me sell it for you.
it like this stuff came to me, much like you were saying in the intro there, Michelle. It came to me through passion. I am a musician at heart. I'm an engineer at heart. I spent years in the world of live engineering, things like that. And for me, I guess it always rang back to that Aristotle point of view of, be careful the music that you listen to, because it may just influence you in strange ways. And that is true, because like you were saying before I joined, Amelia, everything is frequency. We are seeing that more and more now, especially once you start looking at things like quantum entanglement, which just won the Nobel Prize that I keep shooting flares up about. Like, for some reason, people don't find that sexy science. And it's like, like that pretty much lays the foundation of everything that they said about remote viewing. All of these things, the fact that frequency is a part of all of it. Even when you get into those that have had extreme paranormal experience, those that have had UFO close encounter, abduction, being in the presence of craft or technologies, like though if a craft can ignore the rules of gravity, if it can warp in and out of space-time, or travel faster than the speed of light, we are talking an extreme radiative field of RF radiation that, much like getting an analog watch around any magnet, that watch ain't going to tell time right anymore. It's going to be partially magnetized. we are going to be partially shifted to the same frequency as that technology if we're around it long enough.
Well, we're energy, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
energy begets
absolutely.
energy.
Yeah,
Right.
like right now, the three of us are, despite distance, all sharing an electron shell by all 9th grade science.
Yes.
Like these solid objects are mere illusion, quite literally. So
Right.
once you really start cracking that nut and getting that open, it's an amazing world, Michelle, that yeah, you can tune your brain. You can influence the world around you with your own frequency. It's pretty remarkable.
I find it is remarkable. I find when this has only started happening to me in the last while. We were talking about this on a different show a while back, where when I listen to music now, because I do love to listen to binaural beats, and I like the frequencies for different things.
Sure.
But I find now I can pluck them out of songs. Sometimes it's all I'm picking up. If I'm in a different room, because I love to leave songs or music on for the dogs, I like it nice and calming. And I can find if I'm in a different room, all I'm hearing is the frequency in that song.
Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
specifically the low end, things like that,
Sometimes.
because
Yeah.
that's what travels.
Right.
And
That would explain it then.
and that's quite literally where the physics of sound comes in. Most people don't realize if you want a really good seat at the next concert, if you happen to look at the floor and you see a little square in the back, that's the sound guy. Shoot for a seat near him.
Exactly. Always sit with the sound guy.
System is tuned to where his seat is.
That's right.
So if you're in front of that, you're not going to necessarily, you'll hear the sub wave, but you won't feel the kick and the percussiveness of the sub. Because that doesn't develop until 30 feet after the source, which is why you can clearly hear the subwoofer of somebody driving down the road. But they have to turn it up to feel the bass.
That's right.
Because that subwoofer wave isn't even occurring till 30 feet past their vehicle.
That's how I let my mom know I was almost home.
Yeah, right.
Okay. She would say, I could hear you before I could see you.
Yeah,
I knew you were at the lights. I'm like, what?
Absolutely. And that's just it. Those things. And like you said, Michelle, whenever you step away, it's like you can feel that frequency differently. It's because you're only in the range at that point of the subharmonic frequency. And I've actually got one playing right now.
Oh, good.
Let me
cool. I didn't play with this stupid
let me
It's
see,
like show and tell. We love these.
I just hate
let me
this
see how
lighting
loud I can get it, because this is a very low tone. This is one that most people are familiar with.
Okay.
There we go.
Oh.
That's about as loud as I can get it before the point of distortion. But that is 7.8 hertz.
Wow.
That is the Schumann resonance. So basically what you are hearing is 8 clicks per second. Now, the easiest way you can explain this to people, and once again, the only way I can do this right now is because I've got the signal amplified. If I go slightly higher than that, it will start distorting. That is more the range of sound that what you would be hearing would be an octave of that. Human hearing typically starts right up around 20 hertz. That's 8 hertz. So it's just below. We would be hearing the first octave of 8 hertz, which is right up around 16, the lowest ranges of human hearing. But those are the frequencies that, like you're saying, when you get a certain distance away, you lose the treble and mid-range, and the bass waves start going up. Those are the waves that travel for long distances. That's why, you hear whale songs, and they're down in those ranges, things like that, because they can travel through medium, whereas a high range frequency might be blocked by a medium like water, The low ranges are actually amplified and carried through it, which is why pregnant ladies out there, it is hugely important what you listen to with your child as they are in that amniotic fluid. Hugely influential.
See, people
I
would
put
not
the
think of something like
headphones.
that.
Oh, I
Because
did.
the amniotic fluid is actually 3-4 times thicker than water, so it carries sound amazingly well. One of the first albums that I actively decided to put out was Puer ad somnum, which means sleep child in Latin, and that was an album that I actively made for my son in utero.
Wow.
For him to listen to while he was still in utero inside of my wife's womb, things like that to kind of start his journey.
That's beautiful.
Did you put headset on her abdomen, or did you just?
It was just in the general vicinity of the room.
I feel really stupid.
It played. I have a regular track of music that just plays in our bedroom 24/7. It's always on.
Wow.
And it's always, binaural beat music, things like that.
Wow.
And he had the same thing when just recently, whenever we moved houses and I reset up the system. It took me a week or two to get it set back up, but once I got it set back up, 6.
Wow. So how did he react? Like after being born, was it soothing for him to be listening to this? Like he was familiar with it and he's still familiar with it. Wow. That is
no, as
interesting.
soon as he heard the music, he was like, "Oh, that's the music from my room. I want that back."
Wow.
He's like, "Oh, that's awesome."
It works with pets too.
And absolutely.
Yeah, it works when you bring a puppy home. They say that certain sounds that are soothing to them, you can pick up on it. And I know there's even a sound that I do in my dog's ear, who is 15 and blind, and I will do that noise in his ear, and when he's frantic, and he calms right down. It's the same thing with children. I find,
Well, and once again, if you listen to that tone, I'll bring it back up.
Yeah, please.
That is right at the frequency range of a cat's purr that you feel, not hear.
Right.
So that is right at the same frequency range, which, of course, the cat's purrs and things like that have been researched for years. 7.8 hertz was one, and frequencies of it was one that they actively pumped into burn wards and statistically showed people healing faster. Things like that. So
wow.
Our brains are amazing pattern machines. They strive and look for pattern to the point, especially once you start looking at the work of Gansfield, things like that, which is really where I first ran across the work of the Monroe Institute and binaural beats, things like that. Was I was hugely, from the time I was in junior high, into subliminal psychology, the idea of subliminal messages in music, subliminal messages in video and film. When I got to college, it kind of became an abnormal psychology obsession of mine. And I happened to have a abnormal psych professor who it was one of his side obsessions, and he would give me materials, things like that. And that's kind of how I stumbled across the work of Gansfield and the idea that minus stimulation, if you were to put on a pair of soundproof headphones, and if you were to put on a pair of Gansfield goggles, which were basically just blue field, just like a baby blue field,
right?
Eventually your brain will just start creating fractal patterns.
See, that's crazy to me.
It sans the stimulation of the outside world. It wants stimulation. It's striving to look for a pattern. So it will, God bless, create patterns for you.
Right.
If you ain't going to give it stimulation. And I found that fascinating.
That's crazy though.
Started the first thing that I found, I've got it right here. was the Voyager XL. They used to sell this little thing. It's a pair of goggles that you put on, and it has a headphone output. One thing is for the goggle brightness, the other thing's for the headphone volume.
Okay.
And you could even put your own music in the back. It was pretty cool. But
Okay.
all of these little buttons, these little numbers, it came with a book, and you could do things like the 20-minute power nap. And it would take you through a ramped series of binaural brainwave beats that took you from active consciousness down to deep theta and delta wave sleep, and then back up, and gave you the equivalent of like 3.5 hours of a full cycle of REM sleep in 20 minutes. It's like, wow. Things like that, where you could literally program your brain. And
it's much like lucid dreaming, but without just the visuals, because I could train my brain. I could dream about whatever I wanted to, fast forward, rewind, pick up where I left off.
That is specifically where my music has gone now, is to things like my album Meditations and Cosmic Journeys, where the tracks are specifically designed for 528 hertz. Things like that are crown chakra oriented. They are associated with lucid dreaming, things like that. And to the point that our brain is a pattern machine, it's also a muscle. You know, if you've ever done any hardcore meditation, done any kind of long lasting prayer exercise, even praying a rosary a week, what have you, you find yourself before that time of prayer or meditation already getting into zone. You know,
yeah, prayer is meditation if you're focused.
Yeah, precisely. And it's really interesting how our brains can do the exact same thing. If you're trying to pick up your alpha waves, things like that, for creativity or absorbing information faster, by giving your brain alpha waves regularly, it basically teaches it to tune into that faster and to create that faster at the point of necessity. It's pretty remarkable.
I taught myself to speed read a long time ago because of school. Can I ask you a question? I don't know how on top. This has been driving me crazy for a long time, and I think you're the only person that could answer this.
Oh,
you know how sometimes you see on social media they're playing a song and they're playing sounds that go left, right, left, right, left, right, and it's supposed to be soothing. I find it painful.
Some people do.
Okay, so it's not just me losing my mind.
It's not just you.
Yeah, hold it behind your ears and listen to it left, right. I'm like, I can't listen to this.
There are a group of people out there. The way it's been described to me by a couple of people, and this was after I released my Chakra album, you know, that probably more than any album in my whole life has taken me longer to assemble and put together and be to a point personally where I'm like, all right, put it out in the wild. So I sent it to some friends, and there were about 2 of them that responded in the same way you did, Amelia, where they were like, you know, I don't know what it was, but it was like somebody was giving me a wet willy in my brain.
Wow.
It was, for me, it felt like it was wrapping around my brain and pulling it. It was like a device point. I don't remember, Michelle, when you were telling me to recommending that I do the hertz and I start listening to different frequencies. And I said to you at one point, this really hurts. Like I couldn't. Like, is there something wrong with me?
Yeah, why would that be, Christopher?
Specifically, what's happening, especially in the world of binaural beat, you have to remember binaural meaning both ears. Now, what you're doing is, once again, taking advantage of your brain's want for a pattern. So let's say, for instance, you want to meditate on 431 hertz. You're going to give your brain 2 offset frequencies. You aren't going to give it 431 hertz. You're going to give it 433 hertz in one ear, 432 in the other. And that offset wobble between the two going, whoa, 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 whoa. Eventually your brain goes, oh, well, you must want to be listening to the sum of these two parts. You want 431.
Okay.
And your brain literally starts creating the frequency 431. Nobody's giving you the frequency 431. They're giving you the two around it. So what your brain doesn't like is hearing the two different frequencies at the same time. It woogs it out. It's too much data at the same time.
I love binaural.
Someone like you, I would recommend if the binaural specifically in those frequency ranges doesn't behoove you, try pure tone frequency.
No, I love binaural. I love binaural beats. I love everything about it. But that one exercise that they tell people who have ADD that it's easier for them to focus, and someone singing they'll use a song like from Miley Cyrus, and then they'll do beats and frequencies. I'm like, it's painful, but I don't know if it's because of my gifts as a medium, if it's just hard for me to lock in on something. That's why I thought, is there something wrong with me? Is this something? But I like Tamara says you run on a different frequency. We all do, though.
That would be, I would akin that, though, Amelia, to saying that because you're partially psychic or clairvoyant, you're malfunctioning. You know, everybody's brain is different. Everybody's brain, like, these are one of the most interesting things I found amongst all the medical conferences I worked over more than a decade of my career. Was whenever I would work panels on SRIs, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, you know, things that, you know, people like me use daily for social anxiety, that kind of stuff. And the fact is, they have no idea. Zero idea as to why that dosage will work for me and why it will not work for somebody with the exact same symptomology, the exact same body type. It may not work. To the same point, when I was a kid, I was one of the kids that was like my beautiful son, a distraction to himself and others.
Right.
With his classmates.
I love that.
I was a kid from 75, so, you know, Ritalin generation. That's what they did. They just, it sounds like he needs a few milligrams of Ritalin.
Right.
Well, they put me on the Ritalin, and about 2-3 weeks later, they were like, we need to get Chris off the Ritalin. Because I was one of them that it had the opposite effect. Like, it slowed me down. It was like nap time for Chris for 6 hours straight. So yeah, you know,
it's hard
like
to watch.
We don't know. We have some really good generalities, and once again, good folks like the Monroe Institute, people like that have been doing work in this realm for 30 years now. It is remarkable the number of things that they have found, the number of things that they have actively studied in the lab when it comes to binaural beat, the way that things activate, the way that you know, people use it to start tuning their brain and getting ready for remote viewing sessions, things like that. Like I just went and covered the remote viewing conference this last year again, and the Monroe Institute was one of the co-sponsors. And amazing information, being able to sit in on those sessions and really absorb that, because, you know, we are swathed with frequency on the daily, ladies, whether we choose it or not. You could carry all the crystals, like you could be wearing I'm holding a crystal right now. I could be wearing a suit of these things. It doesn't mean I'm not still swathed by frequency. And, you know, the more we can do to tune ourselves, to keep ourselves right, to make sure that we are in the space that we need to be to meet the world. It's I don't know, I guess maybe it's teaching karmic principles at one point in life and stuff. I kind of consider myself responsible for whatever frequency I drag into a room. You know,
But that's a good thing, right?
It is.
I mean,
It's a huge point of responsibility.
it is.
But at the
It
same
is.
token, it's one of those that it keeps you present in mind of things, and we are bombarded daily with negative,
Yes.
negative, especially since the pandemic, man.
Yes.
Like it was already rapidly swirling toward the center of the bowl.
Right.
Once that happened, I think that was Art Bell's true point of quickening right there, where like things are at a roiling point with society now. And to a point where negativity and fear tend to rule the day, and it's really hard to get out of that feedback loop.
I agree. And it generates its own frequency, its own vibration for sure.
Yeah.
Tack that in with a few, gigahertz of this or that coming from,
Absolutely.
Right.
where I'm going with it. But
yeah.
right. I think that it all plays a part to generate us to react a certain way. I mean, as wonderful as frequencies can be, it can also be used against us in so many ways.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I guess one of the causes that I really champion on my show is targeted individuals.
Oh,
to the point that I actively wrote an entire album for targeted individuals.
Let's talk about that.
I'm busy right now writing part 2, which is for the experiencer. Because once again, these frequencies are all around us, and there are a group of people out there in the world who for decades have claimed Havana syndrome type symptoms, where they hear piercing frequencies, where they hear targeted voices inside of their head telling them things. There were a few of these cases that hit big news, like Aaron Alexis, the Navy Yard shooter many years ago, the nice single mother who was shot by the Secret Service in front of the White House, who heard the voice of Obama in her head regularly. There are technologies that can do that. I've got one in my closet, a parabolic speaker. It was a kit that I bought for like $150.
I had
eBay.
A parabolic, was crazy. Big science one. Yeah.
Parabolic microphone is one thing. Now imagine being able to
Yes.
reverse that process and pinpoint sound to a specific zone.
Oh, see, that would be cool.
Same way they do in they did it in some shopping centers. I know that they use it actively in museums, things like that, where you step in front of an exhibit and you hear what the exhibit's about, and as soon as you step outside of the cone of light, it's silent. That is a parabolic speaker where they have specifically dialed in the distance of the intensity of the sound.
Right.
So they can do the same thing. There are lasers that are made typically now on my shows when I would be popping up the articles and patents for such things. But lasers that are made to vibrate your head, things like that. Our brain is just one big jellified transducer sitting inside of a resonant chamber known as a skull. So
that'd be frightening if you had any sort of metal component in your body or pacemaker or anything like that. Like,
absolutely.
That's probably why they're adjusted so often, though.
Well, and even to the point of acoustic microwave frequencies, the people who are Havana syndrome sufferers, it's now called the immaculate concussion. They show active white matter damage to their brain.
Wow.
And that is from nothing more than a concussive blast of high-pitched, high-frequency microwave sound. Directed sound energy.
It always amazes me when you go to a concert and you see ground level people with babies and headsets on them, and I'm like, No.
It always hurt me. And
Oh,
granted,
no.
like I started a lot of my career with jam bands, so I saw quite a few babies
Well,
jamming
now
around.
they give them a headset, but
Yeah,
I
they've
don't
got
think that's
the shooting headset
enough.
on.
And
Yeah, well, what always hurt me was, really, you brought the dog? Like, that's as cold as ice, dude. That thing's got hearing 10 times more sensitive than yours. You're gonna bring him into a basement club full of heavy metal tonight? Like, what is that about?
Yeah, you shouldn't even have your stereo on loud when the dog is in your car.
I know.
But
it's I don't know. It's one of those, I tell my son all the time, who's 6, like, you only get one pair.
That's right.
You only get one pair of them. You can do a lot of things with lasers and stuff like that to fix your eyes. You take care of your ears, man. You only get one pair of those, and
that's right.
They are more than valuable.
I feel like by the time he's retirement age, they'll probably have implants that are vastly beyond cochlear implants now.
They've got them pretty incredible now.
Yeah.
Whenever I traveled, especially for the medical shows, there was one of the doctors who had cochlear implants, and she actively had a device that she could come and just plug into one of the aux sends of our board, and she had control of her own equalizer into her brain, all kinds of things from a mobile app right there on her phone. She could tweak the sound herself and get rid of background noise with algorithms. It was like, wow.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Oh, that's an implant going directly into your brain.
Yeah, I think we all could use one of those. Just
it's pretty incredible.
With not having implants if I
can
help it, because
not like that. I meant to clear out the background noise.
Well, to me, anything within the body can react to these frequencies. Like, we're talking about targeted individuals. Let's talk experiencers.
No.
So that fascinates me. So you're writing music for this now.
Yes.
What made you decide that you should do this, and how will it benefit an experiencer?
Well, once again, those who have had experiences, whether they're paranormal experiences, whether they're extreme cryptid experiences, or experiences of close encounter, they ontologically change you in a different way. And specifically in a way that happens pretty rapidly when it comes to disassociation with people, with society, with feeling lonely, with feeling that you are the only one who's had this experience, that you are the only one who understands this experience. And that's hard. That's a hard shock to deal with. It is so much so that, there are numerous cases in the books behind me where people had the same experience and they don't even talk anymore. Because they couldn't talk about that experience, because that experience shaped them in different ways. Like a prime example would be Calvin and Charlie, the two people that the Pascagoula alien abduction happened to.
Philip Mansell's been on a few times.
And like their families were friends, things like that. They knew each other, but it eventually got to a point where it pretty much drove a wedge between them.
It did.
And these things happen to a point where, man, like imagine, I don't know. I've got a wife who's pretty open-minded about a lot of things. I mean, she's married to me.
Right. But you're also living a good time too.
You're
in a good time, right? Like, I think things
Yeah.
are a bit more well received right now. Pascagoula was like, that was a time where you didn't talk about stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you're fortunate because not only do you have a great wife who understands you, but you're living in a time where it's an acceptable thing. So she doesn't have to think about putting you away.
In a time and in a culture, we also forget, that in some cultures these things are anathema to talk about.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes. And even cultures within America, the subcultures within America, the African American culture, things like that. Like, it's hard enough to come forward and talk about anything, much less have fear of talking to your family because they may ostracize you. something like that. So yeah, being able to leverage these frequencies, being able to use them to passively help people get over such feelings, and slowly conquer them. And you know, so frequently it's the fact of there's a truth with a capital T, but so much of our truth is through the lens and filter of our experience at the moment of interaction or action with the other side, with the paranormal. And you know, one of my big examples with that would be Sev Tak, where she had a string of bad relationships that were not good, not healthy. And when her abduction happened, and you know, branding, she was marked by the aliens that took her, things like that. But she has come to a point of beautiful peace and understanding with her experience now, after having processed that and realized that her initial shock and fear and everything else was being processed through the lens and filter of those other horrible things that were happening to her in life. Right. You know, and it can be hard to process those things and till them out of your garden to begin with. Right. Much less if you have a snowfall of a paranormal event happen in your life that can come along and literally shock you into another state of reality. Right.
I've never heard of anyone being branded.
Oh yeah.
Hey, ET. That's a first for me.
Oh yeah. Branded? No, they left a little mark of an X of dots on her rear end. It was wild.
We had a guest who came on a couple of years back, and he had a few of those as well on his knees.
Yeah.
So I guess we have to ask ourselves: is it ET or is it
experiencer team? So
yeah. So is it them or is it us?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I am a big proponent of the shift to UAP.
Yes.
Because it takes it out of too many things live inside of the Kleenex box.
I get that.
Of catch-all. Yeah. You know, paranormal to begin with. Right. Even the idea of I belong to a lot of groups on social media, and there's one here in San Antonio where there's a person that probably about twice a week is posting pictures of, you know, the lights off in the distance. It's like, you know, at that point it seems sort of normal.
Right.
Which you kind of have to question.
Right.
Like, just
why?
Occam's razor. I'm sure you wouldn't just be posting them on social media. Like we'd be getting a link to the tickets to come see the lights.
I know, it's true. Yes.
You know,
I want in. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like if it's that dependable and that on schedule, you have to wonder, is it still now paranormal? Because you've lost the para part. It's now just normal. And even to that end, when I went to the MUFON conference this last year, I had a chance to speak with Thiago Tietche. He is the sole MUFON investigator for the country of Brazil. One of the countries in the world with the most UFO sightings out there.
And you got one guy.
One investigator.
That's right. Brazil's crazy.
And it blew my mind. But I was like, you know, I've got to ask, what about the tribes? What about the people outside of the city?
Right.
Do they make reports? And he was like, well, there's two reasons. No. Number one, it's like a day and a half long trip one way via boat to come to me. He was like, however, on occasion, every few years, you know, every year or so, I go out and I go to them. And they basically don't come and tell me anything because to them, it is nothing out of the normal. It's never been anything out of the normal for them to see these lights in the sky. So for them to come report something abnormal, like, that's not abnormal. It's part of our oral history. We've talked
That's
about
right.
it for
It'll be
centuries.
part of,
It's
that's
strange for
normal going
you.
back hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Right, passed down. We're the ones that are like, holy crud. But where they're like, whatever. Right?
I
Like,
know.
Yeah, well, and
Yeah.
it really goes to the point of, how many times have we reinvented ourselves? How many times have we lost this collective knowledge? Even when you look at frequencies and the ways that ancient civilizations used them, it's been
Yes.
pretty well shown acoustically now that the positioning of things in Stonehenge, if you are standing at the right spot, it's like a big acoustic generator.
Yes.
It's there as a natural megaphone to amplify your voice. I have been to the theater at Epidaurus. I saw my teacher light a match down on the stage while I was up top, and it sounded like he was 3 feet away from me.
Yeah,
that is an outdoor theater.
Yes.
With absolutely zero walls, partitions, no baffles to direct sound, nothing like that. Utter construction of the venue.
Well,
Created the
stone
proper
also holds on to sound. It has a memory, like it can hold on to vibrations
absolutely.
and frequencies as well, which to me is fascinating. I want to get to one question before we go a little bit harder or a little bit farther, which I thought was a great question, Amelia.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Hey, Alex, how are you? He's a friend of ours, Alex Rondini. Thank you for contributing and asking a question here, joining us tonight. Can auditory signals also affect the visual?
110%. Yes. Your eyes are liquid. They are a big sack of liquid. So the same way that you see cymatics working in a pool of water, things like that. Yes, certain frequencies will start releasing chromatophores in your eyes, things like that. Like you can start seeing spots in front of your eyes.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
All kinds of things.
Right.
So yes. And even to the point of coloration and where color even comes from. I am trying to find, there it is. Here's an image that I show pretty regularly. Right here, you can see the actual color of sound and the fact that, yes, each note in the musical scale, absolutely, because it is a frequency, has a matching frequency of color. This is where the whole idea of chakras and chakra balancing and, different colors for each chakra, all that kind of stuff come from. And even the idea of light therapy, being able to expose yourself to more blue light, things like that. Like there's a reason why we have blue light filters for devices, because blue light is more damaging for our eyes.
That's why it's on your glasses when you're working in
This,
front of, you
yes,
can get
this
just
is
blue light block glasses if you're on the computer a lot. I think what people don't realize, and I just learned this recently a few months ago, and I remember telling Michelle that your eyes actually don't have color. They're just strands, and it's the way the sun hits and how thin the strands or thick the strands are. That's why eyes like, mine, Michelle's, where you have changes in them, is because of everything, the environment around you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
strange, right? Where we say blue-eyed, green-eyed, brown-eyed, amber, hazel, like me. My eyes are a different color every day, but it's all in the fibers.
Yep. And we see a very small, narrow slice. You can see right there, that visible light range is pretty well where we hear also. It's just inside of the range of hearing. So pretty well inside the same thing. So there is a whole realm of things out there that we do not see at all. Here's a prime example. Not too long ago, I had a chance to go to Salem, Massachusetts.
Right.
Here's Proctor's Ledge.
Yeah.
This is where the witches were actually hung. Now, the next image I'm going to show you is from the exact same model camera, but with the filters stripped off of it. So this is a full spectrum mod. This now sees everything that the sensor range is allowed to see in infrared and ultraviolet. This is much closer to the way like parrots, things like that, see the exact same world that we live in. If you're a tetrachromic, you're somebody who not only sees red, green, and blue, but you've got yellow in there as well. So you get to have an additional million colors that you get to see.
Is that why women can identify different shades of blue over men?
Yeah. One of many reasons.
Joke.
And to respond to Alex, yes, absolutely. They are using things like ultrasound right now to help blind people to see. Because that technology is used by bats, used by dolphins, all kinds of things. Even 2 years ago, it was right after the pandemic. Whenever I went back to CES, I'm getting ready to go there and do a bunch of coverage again. But there was somebody who came in and had, it was basically microwave radar dishes that were 3 millimeters by 3 millimeters. You could put about 25, 30 of them on a postage stamp, and each one of them had the range of about 300 feet. So to think of something that is 3 millimeters, slightly smaller than your average LED on a flashlight, that has a range of 300 meters to and fro, as far as radar ranging, that's incredible. And yeah, you could small enough to put on the side of a pair of glasses and have a blind person know that an obstruction just jumped in front of them 30 feet. Like amazing things out there.
Right. Oh, there's lenses, corrective lenses for people who are colorblind.
Yep.
I've seen those amazing first time experiences where they put them on and you can feel the joy in them. Like you could just feel it. It just resonates.
Yeah. And it's just proof of the fact that adds a different realm of truth. That adds a different realm of reality. That person has experienced and processed reality in a totally different way.
Yeah.
My wife gets upset sometimes because I tend to phone scroll while watching shows. I'm fully
guilty
listening
over here too.
I'm fully listening and fully absorbing information. And she's like, how can you keep up with this? I'm like, how did people keep up with radio dramas while they were doing dishes? Like, they didn't see the person's face, but they knew what the shadow sounded like. Right. They knew what Alex sounded like, and they were the same actor doing different voices. You know? So yeah, like you have to think about like, how does a blind person process the world? They watch soap operas as well.
Right.
You know? They just don't see the actual image of the voice. It doesn't mean that it's not a character playing a part and that it isn't differentiable between the other characters on screen. So yeah, we get really hung up on how we process information when our brain's going to take care of 90% of that anyway. To the point of allowing subliminals to slip in, showing the fact that our brain will fully fill in the blanks for us. It will put what we expect to be in there. It's pretty wild.
It's wild. It's dangerous because in some cases, like if you need to have a recollection of something very serious, for example, eyewitness accounts.
Well, and this, I'm going to be 50 here in about a year. I grew up in the age of the idiot box, it being called the idiot box, the boob tube, things like that.
Sure.
There is something to that. Now, our eyes tend to see between 24, 30 frames per second. That's why animation, old film, things like that are very natural, because that's the range of motion is 30 frames per second. Now, once you get past that, you start getting to a point of even at 30 frames per second, eventually you will get to a point of zombification. You will get to a point that your brain is processing things at the same speed that information is coming in, which means it has shut off a part of its conscious self and just started taking in.
Right. Right.
Now think about that in terms of HD and moving from a 30 frame per second television, which was an actual tube TV, to our LCD TVs that are moving at 50 hertz, 60 hertz, being once again that pulse per second rate.
Right.
This is why fluorescent lighting makes you tired, gives you headaches, things like that. It's because it's pulsing twice as fast as your eyes can see. You know, and on occasion you'll see a ballast go out and you'll actually see that pulse happening the same way that you heard the 8 hertz a minute ago. And yeah, you know, Wayne, you do have to wonder about whose vision you're actually taking in.
Well, because this television, tell-a-vision.
Well, and it's the fact of, 60 hertz, you're gonna hit that zombified state twice as fast.
That's why I use it. But
you hit HD, you're talking 120. Now that's 4 times faster. That means if there wasn't a law, which there is a law that prevents subliminal messages from being put into television, being put into film, because at one point they did it.
Well, we don't know if the government's still doing it.
Well, the government didn't do it, but advertisers did it.
Yes.
And to grand success with things like a flash frame of drink Coke. Let's go out to the lobby. Things like that. They showed marked sales. Even to the point of with parabolic speakers, one of the big studies that was done, I think it was in Finland, was sales of bananas. And they actively showed like skyrocketing sales of bananas at places where they used these little speakers to, as you passed by bananas, hey, you tried a banana today? And then it was gone, you know? So yeah, it's pretty remarkable how our brain wants to, once again, fill in those blanks. And if you're giving it that blank slate of one frame every 30 seconds, or one out of every 30 frames per second, once you get into HD film, now that's 4 frames a second that you could throw in. You know, it's just metric bar math from there as far as hot dogs to buns. How many messages you could throw in that your brain will never even see.
Well, I mean, that's everyday life. You start getting into the whole spectrum of paranormal and you know, being UFO ET experiencer. I've spent 2 decades in the field of the paranormal research, doing television and working on different levels of research, and delving into, you know, paranormal is one small part, but very much connected to, you know, being an experiencer, contactee. Then you get to throw in all this other stuff. But I'll tell you, with the similarities of some of the things, like when, for example, when you're doing voice recordings and some of the things you're picking up on, a big one for me was radio signals, because spirits tend to ride the waves. If you're doing like the old analog voice recordings, that was always fascinating to me.
Yeah. And you know, that is as far as tech, that has been one of my big kerfuffles over the last few years, Michelle. I'm an analog guy. Sitting right here next to me is my actual reel-to-reel machine.
I love that. I love using old cassettes and
that's where a lot of those experiments started, when you're talking about the Black Orchid recordings, things like that. From back in the day, a lot of the original EVP recordings, the whole method of operation was the fact that the ghost was able to manipulate the weak magnetic field of the record head to disturb the magnetic tape. Now, my question, I guess, comes to bear with modern investigation. I guess they can influence the 1 and 0 of the digital recording.
I don't know.
I don't know. Like, I can understand the magnetic field being able to be manipulated, but the 1 and 0, because that's what's happening with the digital recorder. It's recording a 1 and 0 representation of the sound that's happening. It's not an actual movement of physics.
No. So, and I've always preferred the tapes. I just can't fudge them. I'll tell you, one of the most compelling recordings I ever got was on one of the old answering machines that had a tape on it. and I came home and I could hear a message, and it was streaming in the background, and it beeped. It went through about 3 or 4 beeps, and you could hear music very faintly in the background. All of a sudden, she channeled in, left this message, and then phased right out, and the music phased out. And that was on an answering machine, for God's sakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
And that's just it. You know, they had pretty sensitive stuff inside of them. A lot of those. That was kind of it was part of the problem, but also one of the great things. Like when it came to investigation, it was great that you could pick up all these stray things and stray sounds, stuff like that. As an engineer, it was one of those, my God, how do I get rid of all these artifacts? How do I get rid of the undesirables? Whereas when you're investigating, it's give me as much data as possible to examine, you know? And I guess that now, granted, I am hugely happy with the point of conversation we are at in the world today, because like you said, you've been working in this field for quite a while, and
20 years, I'm a rookie compared to some people been in it.
True. That's true.
Zaffis, 50 years, 40 years.
That's how I feel whenever I step into places like the MUFON conference, and people are, oh, look at this young buck. I'm like, I'm 49. I'm the young buck.
I know. I'll take it.
It's like when
I'm
I
older
walk
than
into
you
a
are.
Knights of Columbus meeting. Look at this young guy. It's like, yo, I think you're looking at the wrong demographic, my friend.
I know, but isn't it great?
But we are at a different point of conversation, and we are at a different point of technology. We are at a point of grand interest amongst a lot of people. We can thank a lot of that to media and shows and, you know, places like Travel Channel, History Channel, things like that. At the same time, it obfuscates so many things.
Well, I think from a paranormal standpoint, there's a relation to music and frequencies. I experimented with a sort of a ghost box that I had designed, which was interesting because I was in the middle of nowhere. Maybe if you're lucky, one radio station, and the spirit of the home apparently loved music. So I would do things like, okay, I want to hear a little bit of the King. Bear in mind, middle of nowhere, you're lucky if there's one radio station, Elvis Presley comes through. I'd say, how about some old Blue Eyes, Frank Sinatra? Okay, give me the Fab Four. Now you're getting all these. I tested all these genres of music.
Wow.
And this is you know, this is how this spirit relayed. But it was fascinating to me how they were able to draw that in and manipulate that.
I have even come to hypothesize lately, Michelle, the fact of when it comes to frequencies, things like that, especially with manifestation. How many phenomena are being manifested by the investigator? How many people, as they are prepping equipment, are trying to blank slate themselves? As opposed to getting excited that I'm going to this place that's haunted. I'm going to this place that has these experiences. Are you quite literally manifesting that the same way that the scientists were manifesting things in the lab? That
I agree.
wrote about, you know, where it's like when they're going home and did I put 2 millimeters too much of this? Is that solution going to go bad? Like they were actively affecting their experiments in the lab.
Yes. And that's where I think you get a lot of issues when you're trying to, you know, do seances and things like that. I've done loads and loads of investigations through the years to the point where I just retired from it, because for me, it was just, I was working with people who didn't want to communicate what was in their house. So it's like, I'm not going to go in there and communicate with something you don't want there. I'm not going to go encourage anything. But the thing is, you know, you always have to be careful of the mindset, because the brain is so powerful, and we don't often comprehend just how much you can project energy. Like Amelia and I are always talking about psychokinesis. That's just a big one. You're throwing of energy and manipulating all of the energy around you.
That was the scientific end result to the experiments done on poltergeist activity was the fact that it was more than likely a young kid somewhere nearby that was just angsty.
And could have been a woman on menopause too.
Yeah, absolutely. That
I've
what I said about that poor woman that was just in the news about with 2 wombs. I was like, oh my God, that poor lady. She actively has 2 wombs. Like,
there's a projection.
That's a totally different world of psychic ability.
There's quite a few women like that didn't know until they had children. Yeah. I totally and constantly break appliances. And never the cheap ones. It's just insane. Yeah. But I know it's energy. I know it's me. I'm short fused, so I understand. Yeah. I know it.
Well, and there are quite literally people who, much like the brother in Better Call Saul, are allergic to energy and allergic to electric devices, things like that.
I'm just allergic to people.
Where I can. Yeah.
Right. See? Yeah.
I love people. It's the groups of people that scare me.
Yes.
It's the individuals are bright, beautiful stars in the sky.
Right.
Right. Once you gather all the mass gravity of them together, that it's become disturbing.
Right.
Oh, can I just say something? How many times have you heard lower the radio so I can see I'm backing up?
Right? Yeah. Yeah. No, and things like that make sense to me because like we were saying a minute ago, with the person who chimed in asking if frequency affects sight.
Yeah, yes. Alex. Yes.
Even to the point of mental distraction. There are some people who, like me, live with the soundtrack in their head. I tell people typically the reason I buy the synthesizers that are behind me, if I go and I hear like 5 things I've heard in my head and not been able to make, I'm buying it. Like, done. It's done. I heard that in my head and I've been trying to make it. That thing just made it. Like,
that's crazy.
Finished. But it's because it's something that I heard in my head. Same thing with things in my sleep. Stuff like that. If I hear music in my sleep, I wire cabinets.
Yeah.
I wire cabinets as my counting sheep. Now, when I see something that I built in my sleep, I typically try to build it.
Right.
Paul McCartney was known to dream lyrics to his music and then write them when he woke up.
Absolutely. And it's just proof of the fact that we are connected in a totally different way. And to the point that our brain actively takes vacation most of the day.
Right.
It is autonomically going through things. If you are somebody who, like I used to be, where you were driving an hour through Houston traffic to get to work, you checked out through most of that. Maybe you saw a red light in front of you because of a brake light, but 80% of that, you were zoned out. You were in a state of automatic hypnosis driving that.
It's like drones. So it makes you sort of wonder what kind of frequencies are being pumped into the atmosphere to put you in that mode.
Yeah.
But, so I hear music regularly, all kinds of music while I sleep, while I'm awake. So I'll be laying there before I fall asleep and I hear all kinds of music. So how does that come into play? Is this all these frequencies that just are always going on from towers or radio stations or dimensional? Like, what is it exactly?
Baby monitors pick that up too.
There's some of that. You have to remember that folks like yourself, Amelia, folks like you, Michelle, specifically after doing 20 years of work the way you did in the field that you did, you're an open channel in a different way. You're a receiver in a different way. And the ways that you tune in sidebands are totally different. Same thing as if you take a radio with really fine tuning on it and one that, you know, is digital and kind of skips around in between things. You don't get those in between stations. You don't get the things that
I've heard
if you
entire
wiggle the
choirs.
knob just right,
Yeah.
you know,
I hear entire choirs. I
oh, yeah,
hear all kinds of different chanting. I hear Viking chanting. And I'm fully awake. And I'm
sure,
going,
sure.
I'd love to hear
It's
that one again.
it's
Yeah.
also because you are open to the capital truth in a different way, though, you
Right.
know, and in a way that you are willing to have something come from somewhere else, you
Sure.
know,
Sure.
that if you suddenly channeled an idea, you may not be surprised by that,
No, it happens a lot.
you know.
Not always a
Whereas most
good idea,
people,
but it happens.
well,
You
and
know?
it's kind of one of those things. It's very counterintuitive. Like I've
Yeah.
just started my remote viewing journey with Lynn Buchanan recently.
Right.
Amazing stuff. I have been fascinated with remote viewing for years,
Right.
and you know, you think about things like meditation, ecstatic prayer, stuff like that, where you are trying to silence the quote monkey mind. You
Right.
know, that thing of, ooh, irons are hot. Did I leave the iron on? You know,
Right.
and now you're worried about home and everything else. Whereas remote viewing, all you do is write that down on the side. Like, ooh, I thought about an iron. And then you just continue to receive. You don't let it get in your way that you thought about an iron. You know,
Right.
you're going to accept the fact that your brain randomly thought about an iron, and it may be some precognitive stuff that brought up an iron. So we're going to put that on the side note. So we're going to keep iron inside of our head, and we're going to keep receiving. So as opposed to most things where you're trying to silence the monkey mind, that's one where you counterintuitively want to kind of just let the monkey mind go and roam and see where it takes you.
Right.
You know, very much the same way as lucid dreaming, things like that. And it can be scary when you first start those things. It can be freaky, man.
No, I
Like I
miss
remember
lucid dreaming a lot. Yeah.
when I first started my lucid dreaming work years ago, the point that I came to was the point that eventually led to, you know, some sleep paralysis, things like that, where it's that feeling of falling that typically scares you awake.
Right.
That if you can get past it, now you're talking about astral projection and kind of being slung shot out somewhere else, you know, and being in a totally different place. And yeah, our brain goes through so much of our day autonomically that's what dreams are. It's the things that we didn't get to process that kind of started taking root. You know, like as we walked along, it's a seed that we kicked some soil over during the day. And now our brain has some time to unpack that and think about it. Because earlier it was really worried about being upright and avoiding the car in the street,
Right.
you know, and breathing at the same time. So it didn't really worry about that passing thought, but it
It's
definitely
hard to
remembered
mix
it.
the physical and with the metaphysical, you know, with the who we are as energy. For me,
That
the hardest part about the physical is the high-pitched screeching, like frequencies
yeah,
almost bring me, Amelia and I, again, we've talked about this, it happens to both of us. The frequency is so high that it's painful. Yet sometimes I can hear the slight, almost like a tinging, like of a bing, bing bells just off in the distance. It's so gentle, but the
yeah,
high pitch right in the middle of
Oh,
the
it feels
day.
like a ice pick through your eardrum.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, no, and you know, a lot of that is once again, I think being willing to be in tune to things that are outside,
Mm,
you know, and being watchful for those things. Like we've trained our reflexes in a different way, you
right.
know, and not only reactively but proactively in a
Mhm,
different way,
right.
you know, and we tend to kind of look at the world the same way that, like, you know, a brown belt would look at the world going around.
Right.
um I'm not gonna use anything, but wow,
Right.
what's the opportunity for me to use that? Or what is the opportunity for that I have to look out for? What do I have to be on guard for? Everything else. And
Right.
it can be hard to filter that out.
I
Like,
use the television to numb
yeah,
everything. That's funny because, we were talking about TV and everything. I have it on
yep,
background noise, and I
yeah,
can pick up whatever I'm doing and what's on the television. It doesn't, I need
yeah,
it. I need that noise in the background to have
yep,
Like a white
peace.
noise in
Yeah,
the
to
back all
have
the time.
peace.
Yeah.
yeah,
Seriously.
Yeah.
yeah. No, and
You
I mean,
know,
I have akin things, especially for years with my industry, because I don't enjoy large crowds. I don't like
no,
being in large
Same.
crowds.
Same.
too
It's
much
way too
noise.
muddled energy for me.
Yeah.
But
Right.
when I'm working,
Yeah. Same.
when I was in the basement clubs, mixing sound, things like that, my focus was on the stage. It was like a horse with blinders on, you
Right.
know. That horse will gladly get the job done as long as it's focused on the task ahead of it. All the
Right.
distractions and everything else, like, hey, yeah, there's noise, but I can't see it, so I'm all good,
So we're
you know.
okay. Right. Right.
And you take that same horse down the same cobblestone street without the blinders, may
Mhm.
not be a may not be a fun ride. Might be
No.
a little rough,
No.
you know.
Right.
So yeah, when I'm working in a crowd of 10,000 people, uh, I'm good. Like
Right.
I'm golden. I got a handful of tech and I'm going to set it up.
Right.
You take me
Right.
to that same crowd of 10,000 people just to hang out, I'm probably
It's a
gonna have a
different
pretty
thing.
I'm
miserable
Right.
fine
time
with
too.
Out of
it
the
when they
element.
go on stage, but I don't want to stand with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to do a quick station of sponsor ID. And when we come back, I'd like to talk about all of just frequency shifts, energy shifts
Sure.
that so many people experience, and how we can, how frequencies, how we can work that to maybe level ourselves off a bit or incorporate ourselves into
Yeah.
the whole experience.
I'd like
Absolutely.
to know how that fits in with the seasons as well, for
Ooh,
those of us who experience 4 seasons.
Excellent.
absolutely.
Okay. You are listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano, coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans on 105.3 and 107.7 FM, as well as the Roku channel. Our guest tonight is Christopher Jordan, and we are talking about frequencies, brainwaves, and consciousness. If you're just tuning in, no worries. You can stream our archives on any platform you normally use. Search United Public Radio and then search The Outer Realm. Remember to click like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and don't forget to share us with your friends and family. I need to move this around. Okay. So if to the I am so lost. Please forgive me. Seriously, I hit that little scroll thing and I lost my whole announcement. But I think everybody who listens in every week is probably speaking this with me. The wonderful people at Folgers, we want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Tonight is our 400th episode. Thank you for your continued support in sponsoring our show. 400 episodes because of you and our wonderful audience. Thank you so much. Our fabulous banner and promo media. Huge thank you to Steve McGinnis. He's a horror illustrator. He's a fantastic artist, not only in horror, but he can create commission pieces as well. And you can find him on social media, Facebook and Instagram. Our intro and our outro is a huge thanks to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon. Justin Snicker, award-winning composer, vocalist, and musician. You can find his music on Amazon and Bandcamp. Forgive me. I need coffee. Stream on any platform. You can find Dr. Snick on Facebook and Instagram. He's dropping clips all the time on Instagram. Michelle and I have told you numerous times about his little videos that go with the clips of music, and they're creepy, but they're cool. And don't forget to use him when you're searching and creating a story on social media. Amelia can't speak today. So if you're watching us on Facebook Live or YouTube right now, don't forget to give us a like, click that subscribe button, and share us with your friends and family. I am like blah, blah, blah today. Seriously. I think it's the holidays, where you're just
Maybe it's like
constant, and then
Mercury
you get here and it's
retrograde.
like
There's a whole other frequency.
or there you go. Retrograde's never been friendly for me.
No.
It's never been a good thing. But forgive me for that. Thank you to everyone.
Oh, there we go. Well, Folgers does watch the show, so this is a really nice
Wow.
compliment. Tell Folgers is why I buy their products, because they support shows like this. Well, thank you very much.
Foxy Joe, and I'm sure Folgers thanks you as well.
And they do watch. So here we go.
Folgers, ask Jojo about France. That's all I'm asking.
Just
Just ask Joe about France.
All right. So we're back to shifts and frequencies and seasons.
Seasons are something interesting for me. I guess there's something interesting for you too as well if you're there in New Orleans. I'm here in Austin. I lived in Maine for many years, so I got used to seasons. I'd always heard about this thing called SAD, seasonal affective disorder. The fact that you actively go through sometimes months of depression because of lack of light.
Yeah.
Like that actively happened to me when I got to Maine for my first 2 years. It was like, wow, this is strange.
It's a thing.
Well, less sunlight, yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean it's one of those our bodies are made to function with it, you know. It is quite literally our biological clock. The soft spot in our head is direct window to our pineal gland, basically. So
you're not wrong there.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty
so sound
pretty wild
activation, the pineal
well,
gland.
and even light activation, you know, and you were joking a minute ago about Mercury in retrograde. One of the first albums I ever did that fully incorporated frequencies in this way. I'm getting ready right now to go through and remaster it. But it's called Ecliptic, and it actively incorporated sounds of the planets, their moons, and their resonant frequencies.
Wow.
For people who did astrologic meditation, things like, you know, meditating on Mercury while it's closer to the Earth.
That's fantastic, like that. Actually.
So that was one of my first real forays into the world of using binaural beats for good. When I first started using binaural beats, it was much more of my avant-garde music. I was once again a big fan of subliminal messaging, subliminal work in movies, music, things like that. So I used frequencies that made you uncomfortable, made you feel like maybe somebody was in the room with you or watching you. Things like that in my avant-garde conceptual pieces, you know, about like fallen angels, that kind of stuff. So
crazy stuff.
It was always much more on the psychological end than on the let me help you. It was more to see, more to poke and elicit a response.
Right.
You know, where people would go like, I don't know what it was, but that like just made me feel really creeped out inside.
That was disturbing.
Yeah. And it'd be like, ooh, mission accomplished. Awesome.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Great. And it wasn't until years later that I actively, and I guess a lot of that was much more when I was doing the avant-garde stuff, it was much more experiments with sounds and sonics than it was melody, harmony, traditional arrangement and composition. So it was much easier to reach out and do something like that and get a little bit crazy. When you're trying to do music for meditation and to specifically calm and soothe somebody, there's things you try to avoid doing, you know, dissonant sounds, things like that, that I'm oddly actively attracted to.
Well, I think a lot of people, especially if you listen to Edgar Allan Poe's album, sometimes people, they get creeped out by all of those sounds. Instead, for me, I found them soothing, and I'm sure Michelle does too.
I do.
I don't know if it's
stuff. Yeah.
Right. I don't know. And Gregorian chants, some people are creeped out by them. Michelle and I can have them playing on loop 24 hours.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are things that, once again, when you start looking specifically at the construction of the buildings that they were recorded in, things like that, they were made specifically for sonic
that.
arrangement and to carry the human voice. Just remarkable use of mathematics, physics, things like that came directly from esoteric knowledge.
Yes.
Okay. That segues right into what I was going to ask you. Do you feel DNA has a play on that? Like our, like not past lives in that sense in the paranormal, but our lineage, our ancestors, that DNA imprint resonates with certain sounds because of it. Does that make any sense?
Yes. In the same way that epigenetics is changed by diet, things like that,
Really?
where small changes in diet, things like that can be passed on epigenetically. Yes, I would tend to think the same way, that if your grandmother was tuning her brain and your mom was tuning her brain and things like that, it would just stand to reason to me. Same way as if mathematicians get together and have babies. It's interesting how they tend to have like mathematicians and scientists. It's like it's carried on.
It didn't work in my family. Fibonacci is actually a great uncle, and
oh wow,
I'm no master at math.
No mathematician.
My family built Pisa. I can't draw to save my life.
But are you drawn to symmetry?
I am, and I'm artistic in different ways.
Okay.
I'm very creative. That I'm not going to say I'm not, but it has skipped generations where my nieces are incredibly gifted artistically, just incredible. And like my daughter, she was playing piano and playing conservatory, like classical music by the time she was 4. So yeah, it skipped. It skipped right past me.
Well, and a lot of that is also encouragement. Like I don't know. I spent a little bit of life behind desks teaching things like that, and there is definitely something to that Montessori concept of when you see a 4-year-old, they're probably going to be the same at 40. The only difference is whether or not they know to pull somebody's hair because somebody was like, hey, you shouldn't do that.
Right.
It's interesting. The same things that I was into when I was a kid, I am ragingly into as an adult.
Same. A lot. Yeah.
I tinkered with circuits. Think when I was probably about 7, 8 years old, just a year or so older than my son. I remember, and this was the time of He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers. I got all kinds of stuff for Christmas. My aunt from Alabama came, and she brought me a box. And I opened it, and inside that box was a cedar knife that my grandfather had carved for me. Just bored next to a campfire, carved this knife. Like, here you go, boy. Get out there and have adventures with this wooden knife.
Don't stab your sister.
It was that and two, 3 broken items, like a broken radio, a broken hairdryer, things like that. And all of He-Man got ignored. Every bit of it. They were like, well, damn, man, like I could have just brought him a box of junk and he'd have been happy. But that was my jam, was seeing how things worked and why they worked and taking them apart and making inventions. And now I design circuits and guitar pedals and things like that. Like still the exact same thing, just on a different level.
Right.
My life is lived in connecting wires and building machines on site, and let's assemble a bunch of AV gear and do a show, and 3 days later tear it all down.
Right.
Like that's my jam. It's what I lived for, and it's what I was about when I was a kid. So if you follow that, yes, it is very much the idea of almost reincarnation, almost the idea of we are reliving past lives. We are tapping into something that drives us on a different, more primordial level than the stick shift of the surrounding world.
It's not just I get that from my mom or I get that from my dad kind of thing. I wanted to, do you want me to read Alex's?
Yeah, we'll come to this. Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Have any of you heard of Marconi Union?
Marconi Union and
isn't that a band?
I have no idea. I know Marconi, isn't that the radio guy? But I don't know Marconi Union. No, Alex.
No, can't say that we have.
Let me see.
No.
At least not by that. Give me one moment.
Right.
I have a question after.
Sure.
Oh, it's a band, I want to say, that produces music that's supposed to ease stress.
Yes.
I was going to say, is that a band?
Yeah.
She was right.
Now I have heard of Marconi Union.
All right.
I will definitely be checking them out. There are bands that have been doing it for quite a while. You know, it's pretty interesting once you start getting into it. There are people who have written whole albums based around solfeggio frequencies. One of my favorite albums out there is the Rosslyn Quartet or Rosslyn Motet. And that was a piece of music written from musical notes and cymatic patterns found in Rosslyn Chapel.
I was going to say, I've been to Rosslyn Chapel. It's a pretty incredible place.
Yeah, and underneath quite a few of the angels and visages are them holding like a piece of paper with a musical staff on it with notes.
Yes.
And underneath others are rosette patterns that are actively cymatic frequencies that match up with very specific tones and notes and frequencies. So there is somebody out there who has written an entire piece of music called the Rosslyn Motet that is based.
A lot of people spend time deciphering that, so I'm not surprised that you wouldn't have a literary genius get in there and tackle that end of things, you know.
Well, and it's like I've been telling my son, it really is probably more than anything the universal language.
Yes, it is.
Beyond everything.
Music, mathematics, those two things.
You could take anybody who knows music across the world, sit them down with 5 lines on a piece of paper, and they can share the same melody with the same expression without speaking the same language.
Yeah, music is international language. Music is math.
Remarkable.
I mean, 1/4, 16. It's all math.
Well, and it's all frequency from there.
Yeah,
you know.
Is there a reason? So I wonder if this whole like the frequency in music would make sense as to why some of us really appreciate opera and some don't. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, those things move us and vibrate us in different ways.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, no different than one of my favorite experiments that was shown in this way was whenever Mythbusters redid the experiments from Secret Lives of Plants, where they actively put the plants inside of greenhouses with the same circumstances. The only difference was the music that they were exposed to. And they grew with the same fervency with classical music and heavy metal.
Right. I love both sides of the spectrum.
And when you start looking at the math of both of them, they both use Mixolydian, Phrygian, all kinds of wild arabesque scales, things like that standard 4/4 time music does not use.
Right.
So yeah, it's much more mathematically intricate than your average hip hop or country music.
That's probably why there aren't too many people that love country. Like it's very small. Sorry, guys. I mean, I like certain songs, but I'm saying country music is a small.
Well, I mean, it's
smaller
definitely,
genre.
There's definitely niches to all of it, you know, and even when it comes to what is pleasing to the eye, artistically, You know, there were many people who raved over Dolly's work, and many people who were like, well, that's something, I guess.
Well, Dolly's music went on
Wow,
to remake
boy,
after
we are.
remake. I mean, her greatest hit is
And there's Dolly.
Well, I'm talking about Salvador
Dolly's
Dali.
an incredible songwriter, not just a performer.
Dolly also plays about 15 different instruments.
Yeah,
so
she's pretty gifted lady.
she is a
Yeah.
multi-instrumentalist.
So was my dad. So was my dad.
But yeah, it's one of those even though our brains are dissimilar when it comes to taste, flavor, things like that, they all have the same craving. They all want the same satiation when it comes to frequency, when it comes to having the same stimulus regularly, things like that. And it's interesting how now our as opposed to any other point in humanity, our sieves are quite literally overflowing. Our brains are made to filter information, and we have such ready access to information and are so overloaded with it that the sieve is clogged, so to speak. And it's hard for a lot of people to filter information. It's hard for a lot of people to filter out the negativity of the world that they live in.
Meditation. I mean, you have written pieces for meditation that could help with that as well.
Oh, absolutely. Even once again, quite a bit of my album meditation or music for meditation and cosmic journeys is there to help people like myself who are ADD brained, to slow it down, to try and live in third gear. Because it's hard. It can be hard, especially if you're naturally an overstimulated person to begin with,
Right. So as we're slowly nearing the top of the hour, tell us about your show. Tell us about Curious Realm. How did it come to be, and where is it going, and what is it all about?
Curious, when it first started, it was the fact of, like I said earlier, for many years of my life, I was behind a desk a few times a week teaching spirituality, religion, music, things like that. And I missed that. I missed more than anything the conversation that happened afterward, when me and a couple other instructors would go out and have drinks and knock philosophy around and things like that. And I started seeing, this was probably back in about 2014, 2015, that the world was going in a different place, that this philosophic exchange of ideas was no longer happening, that people were gathering in rabbles, that they just were trying to convince somebody of a paradigm, or that their paradigm was right. And that we'd lost an empathetic point of view of just wanting to know what our neighbor believed and why they believed it, and leaving it at that, and still giving a crap about our neighbor.
Right.
Still wanting to give them a cord of wood in the winter, despite whatever candidate's sign was on their lawn.
Right.
Yeah. And our country was founded in a beautiful, beautiful place. It was founded in a bar, by a bunch of people who did not agree politically, philosophically, religiously, but they all agreed, whatever that is, I don't want that.
Right.
And a great minority of our country took place in that. Less than 25% of the standing populace took part in the American Revolution. Most everybody else was like, hey man, if you could stop that craziness, because that's crazy. Like, I know we all left over here because we were crazy. But that's just crazy.
But you're crazier. Yeah.
Because
our kind of crazy, and then there's your kind of crazy.
That begat my show, Dudes and Beer, which was quite literally this. It was 3 people getting together once a week. Everybody bring a 6-pack and 6 topics. Maybe we'll get through it all. Maybe we'll agree on all of it. Probably we won't. But next week, we're still going to come and we're still going to talk and we're still going to be friends.
Right.
Despite any and sometimes it got heated.
Right.
Like it got heated sometimes.
Yeah.
But we're all still friends to this day. Every one of us, you know,
sharing of ideas and meeting of the minds and, that sort of thing.
When I sign off every show, it's the fact that open hearts and open minds make the conversation. And without a conversation, we ain't going nowhere as humanity.
It's
period.
True. It's true.
And that's kind of where we're at. Now, granted, it got to a point that I was on the road with work as much as I was at the time, 35, 40 weeks a year, doing things. So it was like, wow, I'm paying for a studio space. Never at that studio space.
Right. Right.
So
That's true.
at that point, it became frequently it was just me and a guest and not dialing into the studio space and dealing with a place with no internet to record a remote show. And it became much more about the deep conversation about hidden and anathema topics, things that people are uncomfortable talking about. Because we've got to be okay talking about them.
Yeah, we're in an age of censorship now. You got to be careful about that.
Well, and and I've definitely had at least 3 shows in my time that have been banned in countries, have been banned off platforms, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But to me, that's just badge of honor. That just means I'm
say,
actively striking a chord if I get banned.
Yes.
That means I'm hitting something. But I mean, people don't want to talk about things like organ trafficking, Michelle. No. They don't want to talk about things like
I'm bizarre.
Human trafficking.
Oh, I do.
You know, and the fact that like that's going on in your backyard.
Oh yes.
I just posted that. Yeah, I just posted
true.
a clip from the Sound of Freedoms. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and these are things that we don't want to talk about as a society. But if we don't talk about them, where are we going to be?
It's not going away because you're not talking about it.
That's it.
It's not polite conversation because it instills fear in people. But the only way you can combat it and fight it is by talking about it.
I'm pretty sure most religious conversations instill some fear in somebody in the room.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm sure most political conversations do.
Yeah.
You know,
like,
and I just recently saw it. It makes me feel so boomer sometimes to say it like this, but I did just see a meme the other day that was like, the world is not responsible for your triggers.
It's true.
And it's a fact. I have numerous triggers in the world. I have numerous things that bring on my anxiety, but I cannot not go in the world because like the dude at the checkout counter doesn't know my trigger.
Right.
You know?
Oh my gosh.
And that's kind of where we've gotten to is a point of, and people forget psychologically, our brains have 3 modes: fight, flight, and then that third one that people always forget, freeze. Freeze. And that's where most people are at. We are at a huge point of not only want of confirmation of what we believe, but also the horrible point of dislocation from the truth and disassociation from fact and the fact of even dissonant reality, the idea that cognitive dissonance is a real thing out there where people are like, oh no, that totally goes against everything I know to be true, so I do not accept the fact.
Right.
And it's like, wow, you marry cognitive dissonance with the want of confirmation, be it a religious want of confirmation, a paranormal want of confirmation, what have you, a political want of confirmation. These are dangerous things that can be mixed together. And like I say on the show all the time, we have to be careful, because so much of this comes down to distillative thinking. And the only thing that you get from distillation is something volatile.
Yes.
That's it. You know, whether it's an exclusionary outlook of even the idea that the media is now using terms like UFO denier. Like, you got to think about that. For 40, 50 years, it's been crazy Uncle Chet, the UFO believer.
Yes.
And now there are terms like UFO denier being thrown around.
But yet they just voted in that they don't want to disclose.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
and at the same time that they are ringing flags and everything else in whistleblower testimony about, well, you know, these things are flying in flight path. These things are flying over airports. These things are in sovereign airspace. What was the article this last week? UFO photographed over Air Force One over LAX.
Sure.
So there.
And we voted not to disclose, just so y'all know.
Yeah.
I wonder if other planets
throwing those headlines
over
around.
one of the busiest airports in the world, quite literally over one of the most powerful planes and people in the world. So tell me it's not an active threat now. I bet you they released some kind of money.
Yeah, Denver's very, very.
It's
you know,
but I wonder if they're having that conversation on other planets about us.
Well, you know, the disturbing thing is, and this kind of goes along with the meme that you see all the time of the aliens locking the door as they pass by Earth.
Going by Earth. Yeah. I know. You can't blame them, really. We're the kids that can't play nice in the sandbox.
No, absolutely.
100%.
And you know, you do have to wonder, as an approaching race, as an approaching civilization, you would start getting our communications long before you ever caught sight of us.
That's true.
So imagine all of that data with zero frame of reference.
Yes.
Everything. Imagine the madness of humanity, the good, the bad, the hilarious, the horrible, with zero frame of reference as to the history of how we got here. Now, granted, they would be catching that historically as they approach, just because of the way the speed of light works in radio waves. So they would be literally traveling through the history of humanity and our conversation.
Well, they would know a lot more than us. Let's put it that way.
What would they think when they got here, though, with sight unseen?
Those poor things don't know where they came from.
You know? Yeah. Right? If only they knew about crazy Uncle Chet.
Exactly.
They do. That's why they're not here.
That's right. That's right.
Haven't you ever seen that meme where the
crazy
family...
Uncle Chet? What are you talking about?
Have you ever seen that meme, Christopher, with the family? They take a fall photo and their babies are sitting in pumpkins. The wife's got pumpkin as a bra, and it says this. SHIT is why the aliens don't come.
That's right.
And it's a photo of Morgan Freeman going like,
absolutely. Absolutely. You know,
that's my favorite one.
I mean, I tell people all the time, I'm fully down with, you know, believing out there things. I was raised Roman Catholic.
And we all
you can't get more out there than some of the things the Catholics believe.
Oh God, that's a whole other show, isn't it?
You know,
we can do that.
But at the same token,
like all religions, it has
at the same token to think about that. It's the idea of that is but one of many pieces of filter paper through which the light of reality comes to me.
Right.
You know, and we have to be willing to see that. We have to be willing to see that, you know, whenever you take a picture, folks, is that the evidence? Air quotes, if you're just listening.
Yes.
You know, is that the quote evidence? Because evidence defends your life in court. Would you be willing to have that photograph you took at Uncle Tommy's grave defend your life in court? You know, and you have to be willing to ask that when you're talking paranormal, because otherwise you're making it pretty normal.
Right.
just to loop it right back to the beginning of the conversation and the idea of catch-all bins, you know?
And that's a perfect place to at the top of the hour. It just goes by too quick. It really does. So please, we could do this again.
Absolutely, anytime.
We'll
Feel free to reach out.
hours. I know.
Absolutely.
There's too much for just a little bit of time.
I know.
It
it's
is.
like so tell everybody where to find you. Promote yourself, please.
You can shameless self-promotion time. You can tune in every Tuesday night. We are live at 8 p.m. Central. Typically a live guest followed by a short commercial break, then a pre-recorded conversation. You can find my music and therapy music at artofchristopherjordan.com. You can follow the show at curiousrealm.com. We're out there on just about every platform you can think of. So just hop into Google or whatever your desired browser is and Google Curious Realm, and I guarantee you will find us.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you.
We would definitely love to do it again and just sort of
pick
up where
Reach out anytime, ladies. It's been more than a pleasure.
Fantastic.
Learned a lot. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
And you too.
We'll see you in
Chris
2024.
Done.
Wait, Chris, what?
Chris Kwanzaa done.
I love
it. Covers them all.
I love it. I love it. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Christopher.
Take care, guys.
Good night. Well, guys, we are at the end of another fantastic segment of The Outer Realm. 400th episode coming to an end. Tomorrow night, make sure you join us because we're going to have an open mic night to basically commemorate, the year and some of the exciting things that we've gotten to do throughout 400 episodes. And we all get to hang out with you guys. And of course, right before New Year's to boot. Come on, this is going to be fantastic.
To boot. That's
just
very Canadian.
Yeah, for sure. So big thank you to Christopher Jordan. That was just fantastic. He's just such a joy to spend some time with. So huge thank you to him. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee, Justin Snicker, Steve McGinnis, and of course, our network, United Public Radio. So guys, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.